Okay. So I have tried, see, it's a difficult topic when it comes to MD medicine. At least during my degree, I did not know much about muscular dystrophy. So I have tried to keep it as simple as possible. And towards the end of the lecture, I will give you practical tips which I have learned during my, tenure in neurology. So basic aim will be that at the end of the lecture, you are able to understand what is a muscular dystrophy and maybe little bit more than that. So let's start. Anyone can stop me whenever you want. Okay. So the first question is what are muscular dystrophy? This is commonly asked in exam also. So I thought I cover. Now here every line, every word is important. See, it's a clinical heterogeneous. Clinically heterogeneous means there are clinically, it consists of different signs. The different muscular dystrophies will present with different clinical symptoms. It is genetically heterogeneous means some are trinucleotide repeat disorders, some are single gene mutations, some are in frame mutations, some are out of frame mutations. And it is biochemically also heterogeneous. Means some will have elevated CPK and some may not have any elevated CPK. Okay. So it is a heterogeneous group of disorders, the common feature of which is a dystrophic pathological features on muscle biopsy. Clinically, dystrophies are characterized by progressive muscle weakness in limb, axial, and facial muscles. There can be involvement of respiratory muscles, cardiac smooth muscles, as well as swallowing muscles. And rarely you can see involvement of brain, inner ear, eyes, or even skin. Clear? We go to next slide. Okay, this is a list of common muscular dystrophies. But we see most often in clinical practice are Duchenne, Becker's muscular dystrophy, facioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy, limb girdle muscular dystrophy, especially calpainopathy, sarcoglycanopathies, and dysferlinopathies, myotonic dystrophy, and rarely we see these patients, Emery-Dreifuss or congenital muscular dystrophy, or even oculopharyngeal muscular dystrophy. Mainly, we are confined to this. These are the dystrophies which we commonly see. You see this photograph, you can see meditors are weak, face is thinned out, there is bilateral ptosis, hallmark of, and there is myotonia. I cannot run videos here. So a hallmark of a patient with myotonic muscular dystrophy. So these are the common muscular dystrophies we see: Duchenne, Becker, facioscapulohumeral, limb girdle muscular dystrophy, and myotonic dystrophy. So why do muscular dystrophies matter to us? See, the overall prevalence of point prevalence. At any point of time, there will be around 30 to 40 patients of different muscular dystrophies in 1 lakh population. So if we see Chandigarh has a population of around 10 lakhs, so we will be having close to 500 cases. That's a reasonable number. And with our drainage area of nearly 2 crore, we have numerous patients of muscular dystrophy. It is only by chance they don't come to us or we do not pick them up. The commonest one is Duchenne. It has a point prevalence of 9 in 1 lakh and an incidence of 1 in 3,300 male live births. So in India, usually there are at any point of time there are 22,000 of Duchenne muscular dystrophy cases. This data dates back to 2000. So with increasing population, we must be having more now. And every year we add 2,500 more patients. Becker's is less common than Duchenne with a point prevalence of 7 per lakh, myotonic dystrophy around 10. I feel facioscapulohumeral is also close to 10, though um, literature says otherwise. And calpain and dysferlinopathies are also quite common LG limb girdle muscular dystrophy seen in our setup. Don't be worried about these names. I will be revising them again and again. It's just a start, and I hope by the end of this lecture you are aware of these common names also. Again, relative prevalence of these. Duchenne is the commonest one. Duchenne you must have heard. All of you must have heard the name. Duchenne is the commonest one. Myotonic dystrophy is the most common adult muscular dystrophy, followed by facioscapulohumeral, almost the same. Limb girdle muscular dystrophy, Becker's muscular dystrophy, and rarely you see other neuromuscular disorders. So this is how I am going to discuss today. One is I'm going to teach you muscular dystrophies considering Duchenne muscular dystrophy as prototype. It's I'm sorry that I cannot it cannot be a two-way communication. It is just one-way communication. So I really don't know what you are understanding and what not. I hope at the end of this, you will be able to understand something. When we consider a muscle disorder, I mean that we will keep few slides approach to a patient with the pure motor syndrome, how to manage them. But of course, I'm not going to discuss inflammatory myopathy here. The lecture will be confined only to muscular dystrophy, our approach and differential diagnosis. So Duchenne, as I already mentioned, is the commonest muscular dystrophy. The incidence is around 1 in 3,500 male live births. Becker's muscular dystrophy is much less common at the rate of 0.5 per 10,000 male live births. Now, important thing is that with current management strategies, better management, better respiratory management, there is a possibility that even patients with Duchenne muscular dystrophy may survive up to 30s or rarely even up to 40 years of age. Okay. Now, how does this Duchenne muscular dystrophy occurs? I'm going to take time on this slide. The reason being, I want all of you to understand how does a dystrophy occurs. I'm taking this as a prototype, but most of the dystrophies follow the same routine. So it is you all know it is an X-linked disorder and localized to P21. Now, dystrophin gene is the largest one. Dystrophin gene is the largest gene in our body and is 90 times average gene. It accounts for 0.1% of human genome and has around 2.3 million bases. 2.3 million bases. It has 79 exons. You all must be knowing exons are coding segments. Introns are non-coding segments. So it has 79 exons and it constitutes 79 exons constitute only 1100 base pairs. So which means out of 2.3 million pairs, only 1100 are coding for dystrophin protein. So bulk of gene has introns. Clear? Now 1100 base pairs, but the overall size of the gene is very large. So this large size makes it prone to mutation. Clear? In the lower part of the panel, if you see this figure, I have shown all the 79 exons. This is mRNA which is spliced. Okay, the gene which is spliced. This is that. So this protein, now if you see, there are 79 exons. The initial part, this, I come back to this again. So what is the function? What is the function of this protein? The dystrophin gene codes for a protein dystrophin. And this says, this diagram is important. Please see it carefully. Dystrophin is part of dystrophin protein complex. This is sarcolemma, this grayish color. This is outside of the cell. Here you see all extracellular matrix, and this is cytoplasmic component, cytoplasm surface of sarcolemma. Okay. So dystrophin is a part of this membrane gene complex. This gray beaded structure is all dystrophin. This one. Okay. The basic function of all these proteins or basic function of dystrophin is to connect actin, inner cytoskeleton. This is actin filament, this bluish one, actin filament, to connect this via dystroglycans to extracellular matrix. Clear? All these proteins take part in this function. Outside is laminin 2. In ECM, there will be collagen. These are dystroglycans. There are alpha, beta, gamma, and delta sarcoglycans. This is sacrospan, and then dystrophin. See, its one end is attached to beta dystroglycan, and one end is attached to actin. This actin filament end, now I go back here, is at the 5' end. That is at the beginning of the gene. Very much at the beginning of the gene lies the actin binding, while the dystroglycan binding site lies towards the end of the gene. This is cysteine-rich domain. Okay, and here is the dystroglycan binding site. So anything which happens here, anywhere this mutation effect, anything here is going to affect this dystroglycan binding. Clear? I hope it is clear. I repeat again. So dystrophin is part of membrane protein complex, which contains, looks very difficult, but actually it is easy. So this membrane protein complex includes laminin 2, which is attached to dystroglycan. This attaches it to extracellular matrix, which is nothing but endomysin. Now, what is the function of this membrane protein complex? You know, when the muscle contracts, actin fibers slide over myosin fibers. We all know that. So when the muscle contracts, there are changes in sarcolemma also. So this protein complex transfers this force to extracellular matrix, and accordingly, the force is distributed evenly. If if this is disrupted, the sarcolemmas cannot bear this force and it ruptures. Now that this disruption can be due to these four proteins, it can be due to this protein, it can be due to dystroglycan, it can be due to laminin, it can be due to ECM, it can be due to these dystrobrevin or syntrophin. So accordingly, we will get different types of muscular dystrophy. If impairment is in dystrophin, again there is going to be muscle membrane damage, and we are going to get muscle death. Eventually, we are going to get muscle death. If there is damage to sarcoglycans, again we are going to get the same kind of clinical picture. Dystroglycans or laminin 2 mutations are very rare. They result in congenital muscular dystrophy. So I hope everybody has understood every to some extent. Again, a picture. This is extracellular matrix. You can appreciate biphospholipid layer here. This is alpha, beta, gamma, and delta sarcoglycans. Dystroglycan. This you see dystrophin is attaching beta dystroglycan with actin filaments. So if dystrophin is not there, this sarcolemma will be under stress. It will develop tears during muscle contraction, and accordingly, we finally everything will end in a muscle cell death. So now I come to what happens to this protein or gene during. So again, I am showing all the 79 exons. Okay. So this is the actin binding region, ABD. This is the central rod-like region which continues up to 63, given in light blue color. Then is cystin binding domain from 64 to 70, and then is CT domain, which is a site for phosphorylation. Okay. Now, suppose something happens here, or suppose something happens here. What will happen? The first 24 amino acid will be prescribed. This is okay. But beyond that, out of frame mutation, but what will happen in out of frame mutation? If something happens and it disturbs the reading frame here, so or introduce a stop codon here, we will not be able to see, we will not be able to get anything transcribed beyond this. So here we will not be getting this CR domain, which is essential for binding to beta dystroglycan. So this will result in a severe phenotype. Okay, severe phenotype because there is no cystine domain. It is not binding to dystroglycan anymore. So we will get Duchenne muscular dystrophy. On the other hand, if we get a in-frame mutation, we may not get these 5 amino acids, or we may not get these 18 to 21, but rest of the gene will get transcribed, and we will get a protein which is truncated, which is small, which have less amino acids, but the important domains are there. Actin binding domain is there and cystine rich domain is there. So in that case, we will get a milder phenotype. Okay, like a Becker's muscular dystrophy. They will be ambulant for a much longer duration than the patients with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. I am stressing on this because this has important role in management of all muscular dystrophies. We are recently getting drugs which are helping us in managing these patients. I hope everything is clear till this point. So this again, I'm just revising the same again. Dystrophin protein is a 427 kilodalton protein expressed in skeletal, cardiac muscle, even in cortex and Purkinje cells, retina and peripheral. It has a actin binding protein, N-terminus, 5'N. It has a central rod region, which helps in formation of microtubule lattice as well as helps in actin binding. It has a cystine-rich segment which binds to beta-glycine. In addition, it also has sites for binding of nitrous oxide synthase, which helps in vasodilatation in the setting of muscle contraction. Okay, again, same thing, the different sites. So N-terminus site binds to actin, and central rod region binds to actin, cystine rich domain which binds to beta dystroglycan, and last is phosphorylation site. So what happens? Because of some, this I skipped, no need for this. We have discussed. So What if mutation happens in dystrophin gene? This results in decreased formation of dystrophin protein. There will be membrane instability, decreased membrane stability. There will be more sarcolemmal tears, the resulting being increased calcium influx and a cascade of processes which will lead to cell death, the death of muscle fibers. In addition, whenever there will be decreased nitric oxide production because of dystrophin, because nitrous oxide synthase is attached to it. There will be narrowing of blood vessels, less supply of oxygen to muscle during contraction, resulting in muscle damage and eventually muscle cell death. Okay. Again, in frame mutations, okay, this normal dystrophin, this is out of frame mutation. We are not getting cysteine rich domain. In frame mutation, we are getting cysteine rich domain. It can still bind. Important sites are there. So Becker's muscular dystrophy, no cysteine domain, it cannot bind, and we get a Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Same representation. I'm speaking this again and again so that you understand how most of the muscular dystrophies occur in same way. Again, have I stressed out? So if there is, we have already discussed this structure. Muscle fiber, this is sarcolemma. You have alpha and beta integrin, you have dysferlin. This is another protein, dysferlin. You have alpha, beta, gamma, and delta sarcoglycan. You have destrobremin, other proteins, dystrophin, laminin. So if there is mutation in collagen 6, you get Betham myopathy, a form of LGMD 1A. Okay. You get mutation in alpha, beta, gamma, or delta sarcoglycans. There is disruption of muscle fiber membrane. You get sarcoglycanopathies, LGMD, from 2C to 2F. Clear? You get mutation in dysferlin, you get LGMD 2B. You get mutation in caveolin 3, you get LGMD 1C. You get mutation in integrins or lamin, you get congenital muscular dystrophy. And of course, if you get mutation in dystrophin, you get DMD or Becker's muscular dystrophy. So now I come to clinical features. I hope everyone has understood. If anybody has any question till now, please ask. We move on. Dr. Sathik, have you understood?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You want I can repeat anything again? I want
Sir,
you to understand this because this has implications in treatment.
yes, sir.
So I continue.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes.
Now we come to the clinical features. See, most of the muscular dystrophies present with weakness of proximal muscles. I am taking Duchenne as a prototype. The usual onset is 3 to 6 years of age, but it can present at any age. The classic symptoms in Duchenne are at least delayed walking. Because of proximal muscle weakness, they will have difficulty in rising from floor. They will have difficulty in jumping as well as they will have difficulty in running. The classic muscles which are weak in Duchenne are hip and knee extension. As we will learn over the course of time, every muscular dystrophy has a particular pattern of muscle weakness, which is hallmark of muscular dystrophy. Okay, Duchenne has the feature of Duchenne is weakness of hip and knee extensors. So this results in frequent falls due to buckling. If quadricep is weak, you tend to buckle. They will have Gauber sign. Okay, toe walking is very common. Toe walking is because of contractures of the Achilles tendon or calf muscle. Okay, this is because of differential weakness. Because tibialis anterior is weak, as a result of that, calf muscle tends to keep ankle in plantar flexion and eventually results in formation of Achilles contracture. You can see calf hypertrophy, you can see deltoid or infraspinatus hypertrophy, okay, calf hypertrophy. You can usually see what I have found in my clinical practice, EDB, extensor digitorum brevis hypertrophy is as common as calf hypertrophy in muscular dystrophy. Okay, so the main weakness is hip and knee extensors, resulting in buckling, difficulty in rising from floor, jumping and running. By definition, they lose ability to walk by 13 years of age. Remember, bicep in most of the muscular dystrophy is weaker than triceps. They have a tendency for differential weakness. Winging is common and neck is invariably weak in Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Invariably weak. Deep tendon reflexes are all absent except ankle jerks. This helps in differentiation of. This is a common misconception that deep tendon reflexes should be preserved in muscle disease. Yes, they are preserved in inflammatory myopathies, but they are lost in dystrophies. Only if a muscle is absolutely spared, they will be preserved. In a weak muscle, in dystrophies, reflexes are absent. So reflexes are all except ankle jerks. And this helps in differentiation of this condition from spinomuscular dystrophies, where ankle jerks are lost early. Again, clinical manifestation, as I told, progressive weakness, pseudohypertrophy of calf muscles, spinal deformity, cardiopulmonary involvement, and they tend to have mental retardation also. We see that. This is a typical course of weakness. They develop walking problems early. By definition, by 13 years of age, they do not walk beyond 13 years of age. They develop ventilation usually occurs in 16, 70 years of age. By 24 years, most of them require ventilation, and most of them die between 20 and 30 years of age. But with modern care, some of them do survive even till 40 years of age. I skip this slide. This is classic Gowers signs. I think you must be aware of this. So now there are some atypical clinical manifestations. These are the clinical manifestations which all of us know. They can have swallowing difficulties. Remember, the upper part of esophagus is made of skeletal muscle. Unless you inquire specifically, they are not going to come with this. And they may need PEG. Okay. Weakness of laryngeal muscles typically precedes decline in pulmonary function. Okay. And eventually, they may come to you with complaints of early morning and poor sleep quality. At that time, you have to think that most likely they have developed diaphragmatic weakness. Diaphragm is the largest skeletal muscle in the body. So they have developed diaphragmatic weakness and are likely to have now nocturnal hypoventilation and carbon dioxide retention. They quite often tend to have low IQ, patients with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, and speech delay is common in them. Now, Becker's muscular dystrophy is a milder phenotype of Duchenne, where the definition is ambulatory beyond 16 years. And in between these 13 and 16 years are outliers. That is, other dystrophinopathies, neither fitting into Duchenne, nor fitting into Becker's. These are the patients where, we have already discussed that depending on the type of mutation and how much and what kind of dystrophin is produced, we are going to get different phenotypes. The differentiating feature between Becker and Duchenne is Becker's muscular dystrophy patients have much more severe cardiac involvement, including cardiomyopathy, as well as they frequently complain of muscle cramps. Now, cardiomyopathy occurs with Duchenne muscular dystrophy also. The one reason which many people think, including my opinion also, that most of the patients with Duchenne never complained of cardiac complaints because they are ambulatory very early. And if you are confined to wheelchair, you are less likely to complain of exertional dyspnea or other things. But there may be some other mechanisms also going on which may be responsible for more severe cardiac involvement in Becker's muscular dystrophy. We already discussed this about intermediate phenotype. I skipped genetic modifiers. So these questions are commonly asked in exam. But about cardiac involvement in Duchenne muscular dystrophy, the commonest one is sinus tachycardia. They can have dilated cardiomyopathy. They usually do not have overt signs of cardiac failure. I feel the same reason, that because patients with Duchenne are usually confined to bed, they are unlikely to have it. Becker's muscular dystrophy, on the other hand, has more severe cardiac symptoms, 75% by 40 years of age. ECG shows short PR interval, deep Q waves. Echo shows wall motion abnormality, subendocardial fibrosis, systolic and diastolic function. So based on all these abnormalities, it is now recommended that we obtain a baseline echocardiography at 6 to 7 years of age and thereafter do annual echo after 10 years of age in all patients with Duchenne. And we start them after 10 years of age on either on ACE inhibitors or angiotensin receptor blockers. Okay. They are, as we have discussed, they are bound to develop pulmonary hypoxia, nocturnal hypoventilation, hypoxia, weak cough, atelectasis, and recurrent respiratory infection. Another thing which is important to remember, CPK in these patients is invariably very high, except in extremely late stages when there is no muscle mass left. Even in asymptomatic boys, they invariably have high CPK. if a many times patient comes to you that my elder son is suffering from DMD. What about my younger son? He does not have any symptoms. If his CPK is normal, his chances of developing dystrophinopathy are practically nil. Nowadays, we are not using this test because now genetic testing is available. But a simple outdoor test is get a CPK testing. If it is normal, the chance of this index patient, if he does not have any weakness of developing Duchenne, is practically nil. We can go ahead with electromyography and we can go ahead with cardiac evaluation and pulmonary function test. So regarding further laboratory evaluation, we purposefully skip this slide. Now, genetic testing is very important. Why? Not only for diagnosis, but also for prognostication. It detects, it can yield us out of frame mutations versus in frame genetic mutations. Okay, and we can prognosticate, okay, this boy is likely to be wheelchair bound by 12 or 13 years of age, or maybe he continues to walk beyond 16 years of age. Okay, every lab has its own protocol of doing genetic testing when we send for DMD, and they follow it. This is a histopathological examination of a patient with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. I just wanted to show it. See, in a normal muscle, the muscle fibers are polygonal, nuclei at the periphery. In here you see in Duchenne muscular dystrophy, there are hypertrophied fibers. Okay. If you see hypertrophied fiber in a muscle biopsy, you are very sure we are dealing with some form of muscular dystrophy. There are atrophic fibers as well as hypertrophic fibers. There is a lot of inflammatory infiltrate, right? There is replacement by fat in late stages. And there are internalization of nuclei in some of the fibers. These are fibers getting phagocytosed. So now we come to treatment of Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Conventional treatment, and by and large, the treatment which is available till date are steroids. They are to be started between ages of 4 and 7 years. They prolong ability to walk by 1.5 to 2 years. They preserve upper limb power. They reduce scoliosis and provide cardiopulmonary benefits. There are two doses, prednisolone at 0.75 milligram per kg per day and deflazacort at 0.9 milligram per kg per day. Because of frequent side effects with these high doses, I usually use 0.75 milligram per kilogram every other day. Okay. Then now we have new kind of genetic therapies available which have shown promising results and have already been approved for by FDA. So what we do here is, this is exon skipping. I want all of you to understand this also. So this is, suppose a mutation has affected exon 50. This is the dystrophin gene, and a mutation has deleted exon 50. So this may disrupt the reading frame. Okay. So translation stops here. So we get non-functional dystrophin because cystine-rich domain which binds to beta-dystroglycan starts at codon 60. So we are not getting that. So it is a completely non-functional dystrophin. So what we do here, we administer IV. I repeat, intravenously we give drugs which consist of antisense oligonucleotide. You must have read while entering in during your entrance. What are these? So these antisense oligonucleotides are modified nucleotides. They have the same nitrogen base. Okay, nitrogen base is same, but their ribose sugar is different. So they attach to this region, the mutated region, and as a result, when they reach here, the spliceosome which is joining exome does not recognize this, and so out of frame mutation is converted to in frame mutation. So reading frame is restored. So here we do not get anything beyond 49 amino acids, but here we get only 50 and 51 exons are not there. We get 90 beyond 52. So we get in the final descript, there is the protein is not normal. It is internally deleted, but it's a functional protein. So the phenotype of the patient changes from DMD to maybe Becker's. There are 4 such type of drugs which are currently approved by FDA. These include, you can go through the names, they're available on net. They are currently approved by FDA, but are not available in our country, very costly. They can be given IV, and they have been found to be useful as long as they were being given There was stabilization in 6-minute walk test. Patients were not deteriorating at least. Okay. So hopefully in the future, we will have better therapies and we may be able to cure these incurable diseases at present. Other management points, everything can be done. Something can be done for every patient. So we should attempt for physiotherapy, knee supplements, and every attempt should be made to reduce contractures. I complete Duchenne muscular dystrophy here. We do not have too much time. Any questions regarding here? Till here? Sarthak?
Sir, regarding the sir neck.
Please, please. I'm not able to hear. Dr. Sarthak, yes. Are you here able to hear me?
No, sir, the voice is breaking in between, sir.
What?
Sir, the voice is breaking in between for the last two slides, sir.
Should I go back? You are able to hear up to this point? You are able to hear till exon skipping?
Look,
Am I
sir,
audible
one
now?
question, sir.
Uh-huh.
Sir, why are we using steroids in a genetic disease when there is no
Speak
inflammation?
loudly.
Sir,
Arnab,
how
please
are
speak a
steroids
bit
helpful
loud.
in DMD?
Steroids, they decrease
Yes, sir.
inflammation. And deflazacort, now initially we thought they are just helping us in reducing the inflammation and that is, but now we have found they have some additional effects on mutations also. Okay.
Oh.
They are
Okay.
agonists for gene, not,
Okay.
cannot explain now. I will explain later. So at this point of time, you can say they reduce the inflammation, abundant inflammation, they reduce, and that is the way they help in improving the power. Clear? Anything else?
Sir, what are the DVT prophylaxis? How do we follow in these bedridden patients for all dystrophy patients?
See, that question has been asked many times. I have not given DVT prophylaxis to any patient of DMD. Okay. Once they develop DVT, then they have to be treated accordingly. The main reason for that is most of the DMD patients, why they do not develop DVT is their ankle muscle remains strong till late. So they are able to move their ankles. Okay, so that functions somehow like a prophylactic pump. Clear? Hello?
Sir, why
Yes,
Yes, sir.
inflammation
Yes,
suffering
sir.
in degenerative disease? चलो मैं आ रहा हूँ 15 मिनट में.
I think we will move ahead now because we have less time. I have kept the approach later on. Then, and I'm not able to hear your voice. I don't know whether it is problem in my laptop. See, because of full.
Sir, your voice is absolutely fine, sir. Please carry on, sir.
Okay, thank you. So there are lot more muscular dystrophies. Now we discussed that. I'm again coming to original slide. So if there is problem here in these sarcoglycan protein, we are going to get sarcoglycanopathy. If we get problem in dysferlin, it's another membrane protein, we get dysferlinopathy. And if there is problem in nuclear pores, embryonic protein, we get embryodiferous muscular dystrophy. There is problem in lamin, we get another form of congenital muscular dystrophy. And if we have problem in calpain, we get calpainopathy. In India, especially in our part, the commonest limb girdle muscular dystrophies are calpain, dysferlinopathy, calpainopathy, and sarcoglycanopathy. We hardly ever see any other. Any other comes means it is a case report. Now, what are the clinical features? Initially, I told you very clearly that all the muscular dystrophies have specific clinical features. The most important is selectivity of weakness. Every muscular dystrophy has its own set of muscles which it affects. The reason for speaking about that nitrous oxide synthase and other things was same reason. See, every muscle has different blood supply. And depending upon how much blood supply it has, nitrous oxide synthase abnormality is going to affect that muscle in that way. Ocular muscles do not have dystrophin, so they are spared in dystrophinopathy. So every muscular dystrophy has a characteristic feature. Like in calpanopathies, the characteristic muscle affected are hip adductors and extensors. The age of onset is 5 to 20 years. Calpan is an enzyme which helps in sarcolemmal repair. So if a patient comes to you with proximal weakness between 5 and 20 years of age, and on examination you see that the muscles which are mainly weak are hip adductors, extensors, there is winging of scapula, there is bicep weakness, you immediately think of a calpanopathy. The muscles weak are extensors of hip, knee flexors means hamstring muscles, knee extensors are relatively spared, hip adductors. Think of calpanopathy. Dysferlin, as we discussed, it's a membrane protein. Okay, membrane protein. So it is going, its deficiency is going to cause sarcolemmal problem. The classic feature of dysferlinopathy, the onset can be anywhere. Typically, it's 15 to 30 years. It can occur at any age. The classic features, the classic muscles which are affected are calf muscles and quadriceps. Remember, in most of the muscular dystrophy, calf muscles are spared till late. You will get full power in under ankle plantar flexion. This is this plus 2L, which is, I have not seen, I don't think it is reported from India till date. This is the only two muscular dystrophies where calf muscles are affected first. So if you get a person who cannot stand on tiptoes, there is weakness of quadriceps, hip adductors or distal upper limb, think of dysferlinopathy. The two are very common in our part of the country. Sarcoglycanopathies, the third common, we discussed, it's part of dystrophin protein complex, all sarcoglycanopathies. So they are just going to present like dystrophinopathy. Just like they are usually milder, but can have every kind of phenotype, just like dystrophinopathy. Okay, these three muscular dystrophies, limb girdle muscular dystrophies, which we commonly see in our part of the country. There is a whole gamut of limb girdle muscular dystrophies. They are now dominant are 5 and recessive have gone up to 24. But we practically see only calpanopathies, dysferlinopathies, and sarcoglycanopathies. Beyond that, everything for the time being is a case report. Clear? The next commonest muscular dystrophy is facioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy. I am skipping this because I want to discuss something else after that. The classic muscle involved in facioscapulohumeral dystrophy are orbicularis oculi, orbicularis oris, rhomboid, serratus anterior, bicep, triceps. The classic feature, see, if you tell somebody to, if you see somebody's forearm like this, you see here, the bicep and tricep both are thin, forearm is well preserved. Remember, in facioscapulohumeral dystrophy, deltoid is well preserved. Deltoid is actually well preserved in most of the muscular dystrophies. Okay, you cannot pucker. Your lip muscles are weak. You cannot pucker. This is, I'm showing Weaver sign. The abdomen is protuberant in because of lower abdominal weakness. You see, the moment he has flexed his neck, umbilicus has gone up. If you see this kind of arms, this kind of bulging trapezius, this Weaver sign, inability to pucker, eye remaining opening, and remember, facioscapulohumeral dystrophy gets involvement of tibialis anterior. There is very prominent foot drop also in these muscles. They tend to develop winging of scapula. Think of facioscapulohumeral dystrophy. I'm not going now into its mechanism and skipping myotonic dystrophy also, because otherwise we run short of time. I'm straightway going now to how to approach. So when you come across a patient with pure motor syndrome, a patient has come to you only with pure motor weakness. There are no sensory symptoms at all. And I assume that we have already ruled out upper motor neuron type of lesion. So what are we left with? It can arise from anterior horn cells, right? It can arise from roots. It can arise from motor nerves. It can arise from muscle or from neuromuscular junction. So now we have to reach at a conclusion that from which it is deriving. We are assuming here that there are no sensory involvement and there is no UMN signs on examination. If there is a UMN sign also on examination, it is straightway anterior horn cell. Okay, there is no or cord involvement or something else, or maybe hereditary spastic paraplegia or something else. So we are assuming a pure motor element kind of syndrome. What I have seen, we commonly do not give value to history of hypertrophy. We always ask wasting, but we don't ask hypertrophy. If there is hypertrophy, history of hypertrophy, there our job is very simple. We have ruled out neuromuscular junction disorder, we have ruled out motor nerve disorder, we have ruled out root disorder. We are practically left with muscular dystrophies, but rarely SMS, spinomuscular atrophy can also present with hypertrophy. We usually do not ask for fluctuating weakness. All of you know the value of this. Another symptom we usually don't ask is difficulty in chewing. If somebody complains of difficulty in chewing, it is myasthenia or anterior horn cell disorder or myotonic dystrophy. Okay. At history itself, try to make topography of weakness. Okay, ask whether there is buckling. Buckling of knees will hint on weakness of quadriceps. Ask if you have difficulty in putting head overhead, things overhead. Ask if you cannot hold something properly. Just try to elicit the topography of weakness. Never forget history of muscle cramps, myotonia, myoglobinuria. Any of these phenomena will straightway localize your disorder to muscle. Here, exertional intolerance, I don't mean weakness. It is pain in the muscle or soreness of muscle on exercise. It will straightway localize it to some muscle disorder. Exertional intolerance, glycogen storage disorder, myoglobinuria, myotonia, usually very severe inflammatory myopathies are marker of myonecrosis. Second main phenomena, you straightway know I am dealing with a metabolic myopathy. In family history, don't ask blanket question. Don't ask, does anybody in the family have same? You will always get no. Ask specifically, does anybody in the family has wasting of this muscle? Does anybody in the family walk on toes? Does anybody in the family has different discrepancies in shoe size? So that kind of question you have to ask. Okay, does your family have prominent calf muscles? Clear? And always inquire about that. These are some of the points in history. Everything cannot be covered in 50 minutes. Some of the points in history which help us in differentiating. Then observe the patient. Okay. If you see dyspnea is out of proportion to weakness, there are very few possibilities. Myasthenia, anterior horn cell disease, SN-maltase deficiency, inflammatory myopathies or myotonic dystrophy. Other than myotonic dystrophy, in most of the muscular dystrophies, dyspnea is equivalent to the clinical condition. It will occur late. But in these illnesses, myasthenia, anterior horn cell disease, SN-maltase, and inflammatory myopathy, it can be out of proportion to weakness, more than weakness. Okay? Neck drop. Straightway MND, myasthenia, or inflammatory myopathy. Though patients with, it can be myotonic dystrophy also, but they usually don't present with neck drop. Like extensor myopathy, you will get only neck drop, nothing else, but think of these three conditions. First myasthenia gravis and then inflammatory myopathy. You see ptosis, think of myasthenia or myotonic dystrophy or oculopharyngeal muscular dystrophy. Now this is open jaw. Okay, if jaw is open in a person, it is highly unlikely to be a muscle disorder other than myotonic dystrophy. Other two common causes of open jaw are myasthenia and motor neuron. For some surprising reasons, you see excessive drooling in MND. Though myasthenia and inflammatory myopathy patients have difficulty in swallowing, their tongue is usually normal. So they are able to manipulate saliva and drooling is less common. In MND, the tongue is gone. So they cannot manipulate saliva. You just sit for 5 minutes without letting your tongue move. And you see how much drooling occurs. So drooling, excessive drooling is more often seen in anterior horn cell diseases as compared to other disorders. Now remember this. This is my personal experience. If a person is able to swallow but not able to speak, it is nothing but MND. In myasthenia, inflammatory myopathies, difficulty in swallowing is more than difficulty in speaking, or at least they run parallel. If somebody is still able to swallow but not able to speak, it is anterior horn cell disease. If you see any abscess of muscle, think of facioscapulohumeral dystrophy. If you see fasciculations, okay, your muscle is out. It is either anterior horn cell disease, motor nerve, or root. Always look for contractures. We commonly miss contractures. They are sign of muscular dystrophy. They are hardly ever seen in inflammatory myopathy. See, in burnt out inflammatory myopathy, in late stages of inflammatory myopathy, you can get contracture. They will just look like muscular dystrophy. But in early stages, contractures are rare in inflammatory myopathy. So they are sign of either a muscular dystrophy or spinomuscular atrophy. Even in MND, motor nerve disease or root disease, contractures are very rare. Misconception about DTRs. Everybody thinks they are preserved in muscular dystrophy. They are absent except ankle jerks, which are preserved till late. In SMAs, there are early loss of ankle jerks. Okay? They are preserved in myasthenia and inflammatory myopathy, deep tendon reflexes. If you patient is having a lot of symptoms, deep tendon reflexes are absent, and examination is relatively normal, think of LEMS, Eaton-Lambert myasthenic syndrome. This is classic picture of that. You let the patient move around a bit, do some exercise, and jerks will also reappear. Look for differential weakness. Okay. As I told you, if there is bilateral foot drop with facial weakness, think of FSHD. If there is, I skipped some slides. If there is weakness of whole leg with absolute sparing of quadriceps, this is particular pattern seen in hereditary inflammatory inclusion body myositis, hereditary inclusion body myopathy. Okay, quadriceps is spared. It is 5/5, but all muscles are weak otherwise. If you get weakness of quadriceps and long finger flexors in one patient, it is nothing but inclusion body myositis. Okay, hip adductors are weak, think of calpanopathy. So try to define the pattern of weakness, it helps us. Then final is, I just give you an example. Suppose quadriceps is weaker than hamstring, think of inflammatory myopathy or dystrophinopathy, dysparthenopathy and SMA. Then based on other clinical, if quadriceps weakness is more than hamstring, you cannot have anything beyond these 4 conditions. At least the differential is narrow. Now if the person is 40 years of age, you know, it can still be Becker's muscular dystrophy. If patient does not have calf hypertrophy, then you can be very sure, okay, I'm dealing with inflammatory myopathy. I'm not dealing with dysparthenopathy because calf muscles are well preserved. Okay. If tricep, most of the muscular dystrophies have bicep weaker than triceps. If tricep is weaker than bicep, please think of spinomuscular atrophy or even think of myasthenia or even GBS or motor nerve disease. Okay. Remember that you can get wrist drop and foot drop in myasthenia gravis also. Myasthenia gravis can present with wrist drop and foot drop. These myasthenia has a particular tendency to affect wrist extensor and tibialis anterior muscle. Always look for Beaver sign. This we commonly forget. Look for posture of the patient. If patient is standing with exaggerated lumbar lordosis and protuberant abdomen, straight away think of FSH. Okay. Now the next thing is, once we have reached to a clinical diagnosis, okay, at the end of clinical diagnosis, we are not able to, then we should go ahead with, and we do require testing, then CPK. Another which common mistake we make is that it has to be high in all inflammatory myopathies. No, it is high in polymyositis, but in dermatomyositis and inclusion body myositis, it is near normal. So a CPK normal does not mean it cannot be inflammatory myopathy. Then CPK is very high in dystrophinopathy, calpanopathy, dysparthenopathy, and sarcoglycanopathy also. Okay, remember this. If you are thinking of calpanopathy based on clinical picture and CPK turns out to be normal, no, it is highly unlikely to be a calpanopathy. Similarly, dysparthenopathy, CPK is usually in thousands. Final diagnosis, of course, you can get by ENMG as well as by muscle biopsy. Okay, again, just the last slide, how to differentiate muscular dystrophy from inflammatory myopathy or myasthenia. Myasthenia rarely can present without ptosis. 10% of patients present only with weakness of limb girdle muscles. And usually these limb girdle patients, they remain stable for long periods of time. They may come with history of 6 months, they may even come with history of 3 years. And all of us have burnt our fingers in misdiagnosing them. So every patient with muscle disease, you have to check for fatigability. You have to check for contracture. They are seen in muscular dystrophy. Remember, giant ocular muscles. Giant ocular muscles are spared in most muscular dystrophies and inflammatory myopathies. If you see jaw muscle is weak, it is myasthenia. Remember, myasthenia can have asymmetric signs like wrist drop. Okay, selectivity of muscle involvement. If muscle weakness is selective, peroneal weak, tibialis anterior is weaker than hamstring, or quadriceps is weaker than hamstring, or hamstring is weaker than quadriceps, or hip flexors are more weaker than extensors, it is more likely to be a muscular dystrophy than inflammatory myopathy. Most muscular dystrophies affect peroneal or posterior tibial muscles, while inflammatory myopathies may spare these muscles. Either of two, posterior tibial or peroneal, is affected. But I want to say either a person will have weakness of calf muscle in dysparthenopathy, or calf will be spared, there will be foot drop in most of other muscular dystrophy, while inflammatory myopathy may spare both these. Deep tendon flexes are more likely to be absent in muscular dystrophy except ankle jerks. Okay, while usually deep tendon reflexes are preserved in dermatomyositis and polymyositis, not in including body myositis. Their ankle jerks are usually absent. Clear? I think I stop here. I do not know how much I am able to tell at the end and how much I am able to teach you. But any question you can ask? The first question is, this is a very question. Why specifically sensors are involved, or why specific? Are you able to hear me? Okay.
Yes, sir, we are able to hear.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir, we are able to hear, sir.
Okay, one question is, why specifically sensors are involved? See, nobody till date knows why a particular muscle is involved in these. There are numerous hypotheses. This, when 5 years back, the only thing I knew was that ocular muscles are not involved in dystrophinopathy because dystrophin is not a prominent membrane protein in ocular muscle. So one is intrinsic differences in structure of different muscles. Second is different in blood supply. As we found that dystrophinopathies impair nitric oxide synthase dysfunction also. So if a muscle has abundant blood supply, the nitrous oxide synthase, even if it is impaired, they are still going to get blood supply. But if a muscle by constitution has less blood supply, they are more likely to be affected. Then different muscles have different metabolic patterns. Like in myasthenia, we see like in mitochondrial disorders, we see ptosis very often. Why? Ocular muscles are metabolically very active. They have numerous mitochondria. Okay, while calf muscles are practically are not active at all. They do not have that much mitochondria. Similarly, calf muscle, one motor unit has 1800 muscle fiber, while in ocular muscle, a motor unit has only 6 muscle fiber. So all these things combine, and in different kind of muscular dystrophies, because of fraction of different proteins, we see different clinical pictures. Clear? Then we have come, another question is when to give new drugs at what age? These drugs have just come. We are just learning about them. Okay. The cost at present of single drug is nearly 2.5 crores per year. We don't know. The cheaper drugs have to come. But once these drugs come, then it will be very clear that they have to be, the moment you find a mutation, you have to give that. Because once a phenotype has developed, we may not be able to revert that. Okay, another thing about these muscles, no, now we know that, see, for diaphragmatic function, good diaphragmatic function, we just need that if dystrophin is expressed at 13% of normal, diaphragm will be normal. While for quadriceps, dystrophin has to be expressed at nearly 70% of normal. So there are some reasons why these, muscles are affected at different reasons. Inflammation, final common method of death, muscle cell death, is inflammation. So I actually omitted a slide. I just show you how does inflammation affects. So Let me see. This is genotype-phenotype correlation. The question was why inflammation occur in degenerative diseases. Ultimately, whatsoever muscle cell death is going to occur is because of inflammation, apoptosis, and all these things. Now there is a genotype for leukotriene B4. There must be many other. If we have a specific P4 genotype, there is less inflammation. There is later loss of ambulation and only mild cardiomyopathy even in patients with Duchenne. Okay, so final mechanism of cell death is going to be inflammation by inflammatory cells. Similarly, in dysferlin, we get abundant inflammation. The reason for that is dysferlin protein is expressed in monocytes also. We still don't know how it affects their function, monocyte function, but it does. Okay, similarly, clear? So I hope it is clear to some extent. Any other questions? Or I'm not able to see question. I'm not tech friendly. Usually, this another question is congenital myasthenia syndrome. How do we? Does presentation very? Yeah, absolutely. Presentation is see, congenital myasthenic syndromes are usually, कैसे, they occur at a young age. Every person who has weakness at a young age, you suspect congenital myasthenic syndrome. Okay, any person who has presentation at young age. Then there are certain specific features like congenital myasthenic syndrome commonly present with wrist drop, finger drop. They commonly present with foot drop. They tend to have a different, there are EMG markers, but sometimes it is difficult to differentiate between them. But any person who presents with myasthenia at young age, you have to consider a congenital myasthenic syndrome. There are certain EMG markers. You get double peak response, you get fasciculation. So they are, but their clinical presentation can be just like a acquired myasthenia. Okay. How common is bulbar involvement in inflammatory myopathy? In inclusion body myositis, bulbar involvement is well known to the tune of 60% will have bulbar dysfunction at onset. In other inflammatory myopathies, bulbar dysfunction is common. I don't know the exact percentage. Okay. But you can assume close to 30 to 40% with severe inflammatory myopathies will have bulbar involvement. But I also need to check that. Inclusion body myositis specifically have high incidence of bulbar dysfunction and high incidence of swelling abnormality. Any other questions? Dr. Sarthak, any other thing?
No, sir, I think there are no other questions, sir.
Any other question anybody wants to ask? Any clarification? I think finally I could not give, I have to restrict it for lack of time. Otherwise, some of these questions we could have covered in the discussion only this in facioscapulohumeral dystrophy, the final abnormality is in D4X4 transcript. It's a transcription factor. So it affects multiple other genes. So in this patient, FSHD patient, you tend to get hearing loss, you tend to get retinopathy, you tend to get other symptoms also. Similarly, so there are multiple reasons for that. Unfortunately, for lack of time, we have to omit, like in myotonic dystrophy, you see that another question has come, are steroid useful in any myopathy other than Duchenne muscular dystrophy? No, till date not. There is now recently studies are saying that deflazacort actually acts on mutated dystrophin gene. It's a mutation agonist. The mechanism of that is still not clear, but they have found that it affects particular group of patients, and that is related to some kind of mutation in dystrophin gene. So hopefully within next year or so, we will come to know more about why steroids are effective only in Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Disperlin also has abundant information, but unfortunately, steroids are not effective in that, not even in Calpain. Okay, this I was discussing in myotonic dystrophy. Like in myotonic dystrophy, what happens? It's a trinucleotide repeat disorder. So the mRNA has lot, when the nucleotide repeats are more, the mRNA size is much larger. So what it does, it sequesters RNA binding protein. These RNA binding proteins are required for regulation of transcription. So they affect the function of many other genes also. Their normal splicing does not occur. Okay, so colloid ion density is decreased. But because of the sequestering of RNA binding protein, there is functioning of many other genes is altered. Accordingly, we get heart dysfunction, we get lung dysfunction, we get mega esophagus, mega colon, uterine function is decreased, we get testicular atrophy, we get type 1 diabetes, we get cataract, and as well as we get mental retardation. So it is different kind of mechanism where you are going to get different kind of organ involvement. I hope you have learned something. That absolutely, that is the reason for musculoskeletal involvement. See, every trinucleotide repeat is going to act in a different way. Some are going to act in a poly A binding protein. This is particular for myotonic dystrophy, how it acts. So some function by gain of function. So every disorder accordingly means the more we understand about genes, we will be knowing how things are happening. Yeah, in most of the time they correlate with disease severity. In myotonic dystrophy also they correlate with disease severity. Usually if they are more than 5, myotonic dystrophy can present in infantile age also, can present after 30 years of age also, can present in between also. Usually if there are more, the number of repeats in pathological forms can range from 50 to 2000. So usually in congenital myotonic dystrophy, they are more than 500. So if they are less, patient is going to present late. But as a clinician, never forget to check myotonia. We all have burnt our fingers. We all have missed to check it. They usually don't complain much. If no more questions, we stop it. Okay, thanks. Thanks for patient
Thank-
learning. Anytime you want, you can come and clarify any of other doubts.
Okay, thank you, sir.